Hi guys, welcome back to Gryphon Studio. My name's Alan. It's been a while. I can only apologise. I'm not going to bore you with any kind of excuses, but yeah, it's been a while, and I just thought I'd come back with a bit of a magical forge type build. As you can see here, I printed off a cool little dwarf to go with it as well. But an interesting magical forge run by dwarves is a pretty common a modular piece of terrain that you can incorporate into a lot of different things. This one is designed specifically to kind of fit in with the typical dungeon setting of the 1-inch grid square foam tiles that we all make. And yeah, so I've got a bit of a Halloween decoration involved there too, so let's just crack on with it. Good old Halloween decorations. I found this little guy, he was part of a skeletal dragon Halloween decoration thing, and I just thought he looked kind of cool, so I thought I'll make him part of some terrain. And I thought, why not make a kind of forge where he is the kind of the overlooking centerpiece of the forge. So I'm going to use a kind of two pieces of foam here. One is the kind of the backdrop of the forge, and then one is the kind of base. So I drew on some little designs, and I scored the dungeon tiles in, and I also scored in the design on the back wall, which is going to be like a dwarven forge design, because, you know, everyone likes a good dwarven forge, and I was kind of inspired by the Lost Mines of Phandelver starter set for D&D, and this gave me a really nice feel for this kind of magical forge that I wanted to make. As you can see, the design for the back wall is sort of dwarven in style, but very simple. Remember, if you're going to go for dwarves, you want to be looking at Art Deco, and it's Art Nouveau for elves. So very geometric shapes for dwarves, and just create some sort of layered effect with a little bit of a flourish in terms of like borders and things like that. So I'm just going to glue these pieces together. You'll notice as well that I have used a aluminium ball along the edges of them, just to kind of make that stony texture. And with those pieces glued together, I can start assembling all three of these big main pieces using some hot glue again. Making sure that the edges are nice and flush and straight and at right angles. It's worth mentioning at this point that when you have a little setup of foam like this, you can pretty much turn this kind of thing into anything, whether it be like a forge or a throne room or some sort of statue or brazier or something like that. You know, you can kind of use this little scene here as a little backdrop for pretty much anything. Now it's time to work on the construction of the actual walls of the forge, the bit that's going to hold all of the coal, where the actual smelting will be done. So I'm just going to use some foam bricks that I cut out of some blue foam, and I'm going to hot glue those into place. And I'm kind of working from, you know, one side to the other here. I'm not going to go round in a semicircle. I'm just going to kind of go from one side to the next side, then to the middle, and then I'm going to build up symmetrically on both sides the same brick for each side, until eventually I have a nice symmetrical design. And then I'll do the top row as well in a similar fashion, so that all the bricks are nice and evenly spaced. Now I do have some of these green LED tealights lying around, so I thought I might try and squeeze one of these into this build. Just sort of offered it up against the depth of the foam to see if I could squeeze it in without the LED popping through the top. And I figured I could do it, so I just drew around it and then kind of poked the hole through, and then set the LED tealight into it. And it was actually quite a good fit in the end, and it didn't kind of protrude too far out the top, so I was pretty happy with that. However, the light that this LED produces is actually quite intense and very bright and very directional, so I thought I might have to make a diffuser at some point. So what I did is I just glued it in with a bit of hot glue, and I also glued in some bits of scrap foam just to surround it, just to kind of build up that area so that I wasn't filling the whole thing with coal essentially. And then I went around with some black paint and Mod Podge and covered the whole thing. This should help toughen it up a little bit and also provide a good surface for paint to adhere to. And then I found a little bit of coarse ballast and added some black paint to that in a cup, and then just kind of stirred it all together to essentially dye the white ballast there and turn it into a nice black coal-like colour. Now I didn't want all of the paint in this mixture here to kind of set all this ballast into a hard block, so I laid it out on some baking parchment and then just let it dry overnight, and I could come back to it the next day and it would all be separated and easy to work with. And then a little bit of a dry brush with a medium grey for all of those stone surfaces. This will help pick out all of that texture and detail that we put in earlier. I also tend to add a few warmer tones as well to most of my rocky surfaces. Things like tans and browns and burnt siennas, ivories, things like that. Just to help give it a little bit of a variation to the rock face, make it less grey and boring and a little bit warmer and more realistic. Now about that diffuser, I figured the best way to do it would be with some hot glue, so I just kind of decided to make this sort of weird mesh of a hot glue, which quickly turned into more of a carpet of hot glue, just something that I could peel off this surface and then trim it to size and then lay it over the whole, like the kind of the forge area, the inside of the forge area, and that would hopefully help diffuse the light and spread it out a little bit more. So I hot glued the hot glue kind of carpet into that position, and then I added some matte Mod Podge over the top of the whole thing, and then sprinkled on the dry coal that I'd made yesterday, and then that was able to just kind of be pressed in a position, and that should hold there pretty well. And although the Mod Podge is white at the moment, it should dry clear and there should be less white showing through. Now I did ask my patrons on Patreon to suggest kind of colour schemes for this this dragon head, and a few people did mention bone, which was obviously the style that it started in, but honestly it wasn't very detailed, and I felt that if it was bone it would look, it should look very detailed as a skull. So I decided to go with bronze and hope that it would help reflect some of the green light from the forge as well, and hopefully give it more of a weathered look once I add the kind of verdigris weathering paint to it. So although I did ask everyone, I did go a different direction. My apologies for that, but I think I made the right choice. And so using Nailac Oxide by Games Workshop, I used a broken paintbrush by the looks of it to kind of smear it all over, and then the idea is that before it dries fully you take a bit of a cloth or a t-shirt or something and you just wipe down the surface that you've painted, and it helps to leave behind this kind of chalky green kind of oxidized copper residue behind, and helps to kind of improve the weathered look of it. And then I added some wash to the stonework area, and this is just my usual black brown wash mixed with a bit of water, just to give that kind of grimy look to the stonework and make it a little bit more dungeon like and a bit more well, just less clean. And when that was dry, I just went around with a bit of gold and decided to kind of fill in a bit of a detail around the forge, make it look a bit more fancy. I wanted to put a few irons in the fire as well, so I just took a few bits of plastic rod and added some red and some orange and yellow to these pieces, kind of wet blending them together a little bit, and then they will be set into the coals afterwards. And I added some bits of Games Workshop plastic sprue, cut up into little bars, and I painted them gold. And then I set the irons into the fire. You can see the dragon head's already been stuck on, and then I just add a little bit of black around the edges to finish it off, make it look a little bit neater. There we are, guys, we're all done. I'm fairly happy with the way it turned out in the end. I could have maybe chosen a different material for the dragon head above the forge. I did toy with the idea of just stone, but I thought it would look too similar to the backdrop of stone, and it might just blend in too much and be kind of lost and be a bit boring. I thought if it was gold, it might be a little bit too ostentatious. I thought if it was bone, it wouldn't look detailed enough, because obviously you can't undetail a skull. A skull is a skull, and it's naturally pretty detailed. So I decided to make it more of a bronze sculpture, statue type thing above the forge, almost as though it was blowing into the forge, igniting it in that sort of symbolic sense. So yeah, I am pretty pleased with the way it turned out, and it is obviously the bronze paint is somewhat reflective of the green light as well, which kind of helps, I think. So I'm pretty pleased with it. It does kind of go with a lot of my other dungeon terrain, which I've already made in previous videos. Feel free to go and check them out. And yeah, I've got a few 3D printed parts there, which I added towards the end. Anvils and crates and barrels. Of course, you don't have to add those, but it all helps to dress the scene up if you've got them. If you did like this video, please feel free to hit the like button below and leave a comment, and also subscribe if you haven't already. I do have an Instagram page set up if you want to check me out on there, and I do have a Patreon set up if you feel like supporting me on there. I'm eternally grateful for all these patrons that I have that have supported me even while I haven't been making so many videos over this kind of festive period. I am eternally grateful for all you guys, I really am, and I couldn't ask for more. So thank you so much for you guys. That's it for this one though, and I'll see you in the next one hopefully. Thanks for stopping by, and happy crafting.